Okay, hey everybody, how are you doing? Tekking101 here, coming to you from my impromptu studio with a swivel chair. Look at it, ladies and gentlemen. Is it not the most fantastical chair you've ever seen in your life? One day I hope to have a chair just like this. In the near future, I'm gonna have my own office with a swivel chair. It's gonna be just like this. I'm gonna put some blankets on the back of it. It'll be so comfy in the wintertime. My kingdom for a chair. Once again, I'm also joined by my impromptu host. We have Larry the Brick over here. I feel like you guys haven't really had a chance to meet Larry, so let's spend a little bit of time before we get into the topic of the video today. Larry is a very different Brick than Barry. You know, just because they have similar names does not mean they're the same person. For example, we all know Barry's favorite video game series. It's, of course, the Mega Man series, made by Capcom. If you're wondering why, don't think that much into it, the answer will arrive. Those that already know the reason, it'll become very apparent to you right away. It's sort of punny, but that's the kind of Brick Barry is. Now, when it comes to Larry, though, what are your favorite video games, Barry? Oh, wow, that is a good one. That is probably one of the best horror games out there, except it's on the GameCube and it's like super expensive and I haven't had a chance to play it yet. But yeah, if I ever have the shot, I will definitely play that someday. All right, so there you go. Questions for Larry over here. Don't send them because he probably won't be sticking around for very much longer. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about Hawkins. Hawkins. We're going to be talking about Hawkins fighting against Killer. And already I can see a problem here because every time I have to talk about Killer in a video, I'm always kind of wondering how I'm going to title it, because if I title it just Killer versus Hawkins, I don't know if YouTube is going to agree with that, just putting Killer in the title. So maybe I'll just call him Kamazo in the title. Kamazo versus Hawkins. Anyway, it started off as a very interesting fight. I thought Killer basically had this in the bag, given his scythe blades, the Punisher blades, and all that stuff. But Hawkins has some very unusual abilities, beyond even his Devil Fruit ability, because I always just assumed, and I've made a lot of videos about Hawkins before, because I think out of the 11 supernovas, yeah, there's some of them that have very strange abilities. Like, remember when Law's fruit was first revealed? Like, the name of it we didn't even know. It was the Op-Op fruit. At first, we just thought it was this weird fruit that allowed him to open up rooms, and he was like God inside of the room. He could just do whatever he wanted. It's been explained and, thoroughly, revealed, like, what is Law capable of, what he's not capable of. But Hawkins is definitely one of the more unusual ones, because not only does his Straw fruit allow him to create the voodoo dolls to not replicate, but direct damage away from himself, effectively giving him extra lives, like in a video game, but he also has his tarot cards. And the tarot cards, from what we've seen at the beginning of this arc, basically have abilities on their own. Like, if he draws a tarot card and it's like one way, then he gains an advantage in battle. Like, he might, catch up to the enemy, or he might get a strength boost, or an endurance boost, or some other kind of buff, like playing, Persona or whatever. Or if it's like upside down, then the enemies kind of have an advantage, okay? And so it's sort of like a deck of many things from D&D, if you understand that reference. It's like you have to draw a certain number of cards, but you don't know which ones are going to be good or bad, and the good ones are really good, and the bad ones can be horrible. They could be fatal. So maybe that's kind of a similar situation with Hawkins, right? Like, every time he draws the cards from his tarot deck while he's in the middle of battle, it's like, okay, this is either going to be a huge buff for me or a huge advantage for my opponent, and maybe sometimes he doesn't, risk it at all. But we don't really know if that's because of his Straw fruit, Devil Fruit ability, or if that's just something else he has because he's been practicing the tarot and like divination his whole life. But I always thought that, like, okay, Hawkins is a difficult person to kill due to his abilities. However, if you just keep going at him enough times, if, Killer just revs up those Punisher blades and just starts hacking him to pieces like wheat in a field, eventually he would run out of lives and Hawkins would lose. In fact, I got the impression, not completely, but I got the impression during Sabaody that Hawkins, for the most part, relied on that kind of like battle of attrition sort of tactic. Because most people that encounter Hawkins up until then, they might bust out their strongest move and try to wipe him out right away. And, they get really strong and they use all their Haki up or something. Well, I don't know. See, that's the thing. If somebody uses Haki, it can't involve that. It can't be like if you use Haki against Hawkins, try saying that 5 times fast, it negates his ability, because Killer definitely knows Armament Haki at this point, and he would have been using Armament Haki to slice apart Hawkins. So it doesn't really matter, because the damage is still technically happening, it's just not happening to him. And as it was explained during Punk Hazard, Haki does not turn off Devil Fruit abilities. So yeah, even if Killer was using his Haki on his Punisher blades and slicing apart Hawkins, yeah, the damage damage is still going through, it's just not going through to Hawkins. It's going through to other people, redirected through his voodoo dolls, okay? So Haki can't be the solution there, but somebody might be thinking that, you know, somebody might go up against Hawkins, like, you're the mage, Basil Hawkins, I'm gonna use all my Haki in one punch and just obliterate you in that single attack. And they do that, and his body just gets blown to smithereens, but then it just reconstitutes itself or whatever, the damage is redirected to somebody else, and they're like, what? And then that's when Hawkins uses his abilities, right? Now, he does have combat abilities during Sabaody, but that was the impression I got, that he mostly relied on the fact that people do not know he has literal extra lives in his pocket, and so it's like that's how he takes advantage of the fights. Now, when it comes to a very, very strong opponent, like Kizaru, for instance, it doesn't matter if you have 1 extra life or 10 or 100. Kizaru, of course, has all these different light abilities. He can fire literal lasers and a bunch of lasers at once. He has light swords. You know, there's no way you can defeat Kizaru, you know, just using like, oh, okay, I have extra lives, I can just power my way through this. No, it's not going to work. But the way that Oda spun this fight with Killer, very, very unique. Not a way I thought that this was going to go, where it was revealed that Hawkins actually has a voodoo doll of Kid, okay? And we still don't know exactly how he makes the voodoo dolls. I thought it involves some sort of ritual, like maybe he has to speak some kind of incantation over somebody or like physically come in contact with them. And it really seems like I was overthinking things again, as I intend to do, because my fans were saying, you know, most of the time when it comes to media and things, voodoo dolls are created with a scrap of clothing of the person that they're trying to curse, right? So if that's the case, it would have been very, very easy. I'm just saying, like, okay, if that is the situation, there has to be more to it. There has to be more to it than Hawkins just stealing like a strand of Kid's hair and then putting it inside of the doll and just boom, he has a, you know, Eustace Captain Kid extra life. You know, there has to be more to it than that. Then of course there's the whole issue of like, alright, couldn't Hawkins just take something from Kaido and create a Kaido doll? But then you start to think, like, would the damage even matter? Like, something that would be equivalent to, you know, seriously wound or kill Hawkins might mean nothing when it comes to Kaido. You know what I mean? So in that situation, it might not be that big of a deal. Last chapter, when Hawkins got attacked by Killer, he used the Punisher Blades to slice him. He redirected that damage to Kid, and Kid, you know, collapsed to the ground. He's like, oh man, I got stabbed. Of course, he just got stabbed by Killer's Punisher Blades. But if the same damage was redirected to somebody like Big Mom or Kaido or Kizaru or any of the Admirals, yeah, it would hurt them, but I don't think it would hurt them as much as it did Kid in that instance. You know what I mean? So the damage redirects, but if the person is wicked powerful, there might be an attack, like Killer could maybe take his Punisher Blades and like use an attack so devastating it slices Hawkins right down the middle, and just, and then that's how Hawkins were to die, right? Even if that damage was redirected to Kaido, you know, the same level of attack might only cause him like a little paper cut or something. Like Kaido's like, somebody nicked my arm, that sucks, you know, and whatever, you know, because Kaido is just so freaking strong, right? So, what are some ways that Killer could defeat Hawkins? Okay, so Haki is off the table, as we've already discussed. Some people thought, okay, what if you throw him into the ocean or the water? Once again, it really does seem that coming into contact with the water sometimes turns off Devil Fruit abilities. It depends whether they're passive or active, like when Luffy fell into the pool at Arlong Park. He lost consciousness, he could not breathe, of course, and he could not stretch his own body, but his body was indeed still stretchy. So you could say that, but I really don't feel that would be the case. Like, even if Killer knocked Hawkins into the ocean or something, Hawkins would lose consciousness, sure, but I don't think that would immediately turn off, like, all of the voodoo dolls he created, because the ocean doesn't immediately, you know, do that to Devil Fruit users. It just weakens them and makes it so they really can't move or anything like that, right? So I don't think that's the direction we're going to be going. I was thinking of other ways. See, here's the thing. Hawkins does not need to die right here and now, okay? Obviously, he's fighting against a guy called Killer, so you would assume, but he doesn't need to. For Killer to win this fight, Hawkins just needs to be knocked unconscious or rendered into a point where he can no longer fight, grievously wounded to that extent, right? So it's not like, you know, because Hawkins was, like, toying with Killer in the last chapter. You know, like, you know, I kind of wanted you to come at me without knowing that I had your captain as a voodoo doll, as one one of my extra lives just to see you kill me and actually kill him, and just the look on your face, even though Killer's wearing the mask, right? But instead, Hawkins is like, you know what, I think it's fine that you found out anyway, because now you're going to be over there racking your brain trying to figure out some way to defeat me without, you know, killing your captain in the process. So, like, it's like, show me what you got, basically, kind of thing. And Hawkins has a very, like, vindictive, you know, very sort of, like, playful personality with Killer in this instance here. He's just like, I want to see what you can do. And you know what? That actually makes a lot of sense for Hawkins' character. It kind of took me by surprise because we didn't really see much of it. He was always just been the very stoic kind of magician, like, what are my odds for defeating you here today? 75%. Have at thee. You know, it's always been very calm and collected. Here, he's more vindictive, and that makes sense, because pretty much every major fight he's been in up until this point, he was probably toying with the opponent in a similar way. Of like, hey, I have my tarot cards. I have the power of divination. I can sort of read the future. I know percentages, and I have this devil fruit that gives me extra lives. Do you think you can compete with that just because you have some mechanical scythe blades strapped to your arm? I think Hawkins thinks very, very little of Killer. Maybe he thinks of Killer as more of just a wild beast coming at him, like so many other pirates have come at him before, and so he thinks like, oh, this is the perfect way to toy with him, you know, making a voodoo doll of his captain, right? So, as I'm saying that, you know, he doesn't need to actually die. He just needs to be knocked unconscious or rendered to a point where he cannot fight. Remember when Hawkins was fighting Kizaru at Sabaody? One of the techniques, after Kizaru blasted a bunch of lasers right through Hawkins' body, he was like, I don't exactly know what's going on with you, but you're not a Logia. You definitely have form, and whatever. He basically puts his fingers right up in Hawkins' face, and he blinds him. He releases a burst of light and blinds Hawkins so he can't see. That still affected him. He wasn't able to take that effect because it was not technically damage. I mean, I guess it was, you know, a very bright light like a flashbang or something is essentially blinding you. That is causing damage to your eyeballs. But even if you want to consider that damage, it wasn't the correct kind of damage to transfer for the voodoo, because at that, unless he ran out of lives, which was very, very possible at that point because Kizaru was just blasting lasers straight through him. He might have been on his last life there. But let's just, hypothetically, let's just assume he wasn't. He still had some lives in the tank, and the blast of light did affect him, okay? That means that maybe things that could cause him blindness or, you know, deafen him or something like a loud noise, that happens to him directly. It doesn't matter how many voodoo dolls he has, okay? Because when he fought against Kaido, he also used the sonic blades, right? The giant whirling sonic blades that cut right through his body. He could also do that as well. So maybe that's the way that he'll be able to win the fight. You know, maybe not necessarily using the same technique, but if he can spin those blades so fast, it creates like a sonic reverberation. Maybe the vibrations of that would be enough to damage Hawkins from the inside out. And maybe that's a type of damage that he can't redirect to a voodoo doll. Or he could just create like a high-pitched sound that could like deafen Hawkins and he wouldn't be able to fight anymore, right? You know, also, here's another way you could do it. Killer just decides to take the very simple route with it and be like, okay, so basically what you're telling me is every piece of damage I deal to you is also going to be dealt to my captain. And he's like, yes. And he's like, okay, so does that mean I just have to deal enough damage to injure, yeah, enough damage to injure you, but enough damage that would not kill Kid at the same time? Okay, I'll do that. And he just proceeds to just cut the crap out of Hawkins, and Kid is also receiving the damage, but Hawkins would falter first. I guess that would not work, though, because it seems like... Okay, here's something that did confuse me about the chapter. Okay, when Killer sliced Hawkins, a voodoo doll emerged from him the same as it always does. However, it was not a fatal blow. Normally, we only see the voodoo doll emerge and fall from Hawkins when that person has actually died, right? In this case, the voodoo doll emerged with the slash that, you know, Killer did for Hawkins, and it, you know, got redirected to Kid, but Kid did not die. He just got hurt, and he's like, oh, there's an injury there. So... Was the voodoo doll like there just to represent that? Is it still attached to Hawkins, or did it fall off, or how did that go? I'm assuming the way that Hawkins was acting, it might, you know, it could be a bluff. It could be like, all right, the connection was there and now it's no longer there, but I'm just going to mess with him a little bit longer. I'm going to bluff my way through this. I'm just saying it was a little confusing because the doll emerged without Kid actually dying, so whatever. You know, so there could be a situation with that. There could also be a situation where Killer figures out some way to take the voodoo doll away from him. And I know they're like actually in his body, but let's say there was like some piece of clothing or some scrap of Kid that, you know, Hawkins stole and he used that to make the doll. If Killer can realize that in enough time, and he could be like, hey, you took a scrap of Kid's clothing or something like that. If I can grab that and remove that from you, then I can dice you up all day and he won't be injured, okay? But that would be a little bit difficult because, number one, Killer would have to realize that that's the case, right? And I'm not saying Killer's stupid. He's actually pretty intelligent, but it's like that's making a lot of guesses here. Like, even we do not know how the voodoo powers work, so that'd be making a guess. Like, oh, he might have a scrap of Kid's hair or some of his clothing in there. If I can grab it and remove it, we'll be okay. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. And then, even if he did do that, and he found a piece of Kid's clothing and removed it, he's like, okay, now I don't know for certain if this is going to work. The voodoo doll might still be connected, it might not be. I have to kind of, because Kid is not directly next to Killer right now. They're on a different level altogether. So he has no idea what's going on here, right? Also, you have to assume that Killer believes Hawkins, because Hawkins said, oh, you didn't slash me, you slashed your captain. Now, that is true. We did see that. There definitely is a connection there. But Killer, what I'm saying, does not know that for certain. All Killer did was slash Hawkins, and Hawkins is like, you just slashed your captain. Killer could be like, you're bluffing. He's like, am I, though? And then Killer's like, I'm going to take the gamble and continue to attack anyway. I'm not sure. Another thing is that Law is fighting Kid right now. He's helping him fight against Big Mom. Law is one of the best doctors, one of the best surgeons in the entire world. Maybe there is a way for, you know, that to happen where Killer can just slice up Kid. Law could be healing him at the same time and assume some way of, like, balancing it out. But it doesn't, from what we've seen with the voodoo powers up until now, the damage will not go to Hawkins unless the host is dead first. So that means Kid needs to die first before any damage will be dealt to Hawkins. And it does seem like this is the last body that he has. This is the last physical body he has. It's just Kid, and if Kid were to die... Ooh! Oh! I didn't even think of that angle. Okay. What if Killer just goes to it, just like I said earlier, just hacks apart Hawkins, Kid goes down, he does technically die for a brief period of time, Law is there, he uses counter shock or whatever to like defibrillate him and get him back up and rolling, and then in the process, that turns off the Devil Fruit ability. Doesn't turn it off, but the doll is dead because he was technically dead for, let's say, like, I don't know, 2 seconds or something, and then he comes back, and so, okay, there's no longer a connection there because Law was there, and then Killer proceeds to just, and then finish the fight right there. Might not actually kill Hawkins, but yeah. Man, I feel like that should have been my first foot forward. I feel like that should have been the first theory I jumped to, because Law is right there with Kid, and I saved that for the very end. I don't know. But look, Hawkins also has those tarot cards, all right? So even if, here's the thing, even if that does happen, and it looks like Kid is, looks like Kid is safe, and then Killer is going to get the death blow on Hawkins, what is stopping Hawkins from taking out that deck of tarot cards and being like, okay, I guess what's going to happen here? Draw. It's the Emperor face up. That means I get a cool gun what to shoot you with. You know, like, not like that, but he's like, I get a special ability, I get a buff or something, I grow twice as large in order to fight you or something. What's to stop him from doing that? Or to draw a card that gives like a debuff to Kid or something, stops him doing that. It's completely possible. It's completely likely. So, yeah, I think this fight, I don't know if we're going to continue it at next chapter, because this seems sort of be like a side fight, not something we're actually going to focus on right now at the moment, but I want to see where this goes, definitely. So, yeah, let me know in the comments down below how you think Killer's going to get out of, how Killer and Kid are going to get out of this mess, because I don't know, and if we're going to find out more about Hawkins' ability along the way. Can we do Ant Facts? I don't know if I saved the intro for Ant Facts. I'm only doing ant facts because down here in North Carolina there are carpenter ants, and there were actually a lot of carpenter ants getting into the house this morning that we were getting like ant traps and stuff for, okay? And I just wanted to read some ant facts about carpenter ants, okay? Because we already kind of talked about them. The ants that blew themselves up, that had the head that could go with like that special organ that could cause them to just rupture and explode, those were a genus of carpenter ant. But carpenter ants, fun fact, they actually do not consume the wood that they're eating through. They have really powerful jaws, and I was actually looking at them this morning, and yeah, they're really big ants, because we had carpenter ants too a couple years ago, and the giant, mandibles are there, so that could definitely hurt if they bite you. But they don't actually eat the wood. They eat it, or they to chew it up and to basically, make their pathways through it and their nests through it, but they don't actually consume it. They're actually very clean ants. They actually clean out all the debris from their nests, as well as any sort of like deceased ants along the line. Like, they'll just clean all that stuff out there. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, those are carpenter ants. They eat wood, and also the ones that can explode, but we already kind of talked about those. Pretty much just wanted to do ant facts because we're down here, and oh, look at all the ants in your kitchen. So there you go. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. This will be Tekking and Larry the Brick signing out. So what do you like to do on the weekends, Larry? What are your hobbies? Oh man, I haven't been playing volleyball in a while. I should probably do that. Yeah.